Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear students. The current session is about dialects and identity. I hope and expect by the end of the session you would be able to understand the relationship of the two in the backdrop of sociolinguistics. Well, my dear students, at the outset, I would just like you to think for a while about what is language and what is a dialect, because this differentiation of language and dialect is crucial for your understanding of the ideas that we are going to share. When it comes to the idea of identity and linking it to dialects, it becomes crucially important in social linguistics because, it is dealing with how people divide themselves or how people, categorize themselves into different kinds of categories based on different language choices. With this reference, we need to consider social dialects. We also need to consider regional dialects. People have certain identities in terms of social groups, which give kind of rise to certain social dialects. And then people belonging to certain regions, to certain areas, have certain identities associated with those areas, which gives rise to the idea of regional dialects. Well, my dear students, I would like to refer to a significant work in sociolinguistics that would give you an idea of how does, this relationship of dialect and identity operate. The work is by Dyers 2000 and 2002 and Wessink and Dyers 2004. And actually the work studies, communities in Corby, UK and Kingston, Jamaica to utilize, the language ideology model in two very important but different kind of dialect contact situations and contexts. Dyer's 2000 study of Corby investigated changes that were occurring in the local English dialect due to the immigration of large number of Scots to this area who were working there, in steelworks in the town. And just for your understanding of the geographical clarity of the area, Corby is around 100 miles north of London and 300 miles off from Glasgow, Scotland. Now, one of the major point of study in this study of dialects and their relationship with identity was that the social significance or meaning of the identity that was projected by young Corby people. So the work was on young people who sounded Scottish, but actually who did not have a Scottish ancestry or a Scottish background. So, it was not because they belonged to those families who had Scottish origin. Still, there was this Scottish accent in their, in their speaking style. And it was very interesting to find out, since Scottish and more particularly if we talk of Glaswegian English, from where many of these Corby migrants they had hailed from, this is often viewed as a stigmatized variety. This is considered to be a kind of a low variety, which is not very much appreciated. This is marked with that kind of a particular kind of identity of these people. Well, my dear students, in all this context, when we look at Wessink and Dyer 2004's further examination of how phonological features in Kingston and Corby operated, and how, this use of the variety, of the accent of the variety that was considered to be stigmatized by certain speakers of this area was crucial. It was found that because of their association with either a rural Jamaican or a Scottish background, they were apparently using this being a symbol of local pride when it came to the younger generation of the people. So it was more like wearing the badge of local identity for themselves. A variationist analysis of this data in terms of variations, how it was occurring. When this analysis was done from these studies, it was concluded that speakers were indexing a Scottish identity in using Scottish variants, or a rural identity in the use of traditionally rural variants of language choices in the Jamaican context. However, this was completely different from the ideological perspectives. When an analysis of speakers' ideologies was done, it showed that the salient, the important, the significant social category for the speakers had changed over the times. The elder generation had different set of beliefs and a different category of choices in terms of identity, whereas over the times for the younger generation it had changed. The opposition, now this is important for you to understand, the opposition between Scottish and English that was salient for the oldest generation, that was prominent in the oldest generation. They would use Scottish to show that particular identity against the English identity in Cobby. Now it was replaced in the younger generation, in the younger children, with a different kind of opposition between Cobby and the neighboring town of Kettering for the youngest speakers. For them to show a difference, for the younger people to show a difference from being, identified as Scottish or being identified as English was not more important. For them, what was more important was to be identified as Cobby people or to be identified as, the people from Kettering. So, the neighboring town. So, new terms of identities were emerging not only here, but also, people had started looking at these identities from different perspectives. Because when it comes to the issue of identity, A's identity would be determined in relation to B's identity. And in this case, what has happened? A now have decided over times through the generations not to help get their identity identified in terms of relation to B, but also of relationship of A with C, which in this case is Kettering. So, I would conclude by saying that the perception of identity that sociolinguistics deals with, or that sociolinguists have, it is a very, very complex idea, and actually it is far more complex than it seemed to be at the outset.